Welcome to the last video in this unit, the video that connects polygons with perimeter. And probably from your middle school days, you're familiar with what the concept or the idea of perimeter is and how to find it. Remember that perimeter is just the distance around the outside of the figure. And the way that we find perimeter for polygons is to add all the lengths of all their sides together. And we're going to keep that idea in purple in mind as we work through the problems on this page. Number 1 says the perimeter of a regular pentagon is 15x plus 30. What is the length of just one side in terms of x? So in other words, what this question is saying is it's saying that after we added the lengths of all 5 sides together, we ended up with 15x plus 30. Because this pentagon is a regular pentagon, we know that each of those 5 sides must have the same measure. So in order to determine the length of just one side, I'm going to take the perimeter, or in other words, all 5 sides added together, and divide that perimeter by 5, and that'll give me the length of one side. So 3x plus 6. Notice the words in terms of x here. Notice the fact that my answer contains an x. Number 2 says the length of just one side of a regular octagon is 2x minus 3. What is the perimeter? So perimeter means to add all sides together. An octagon is going to have 8 sides, each of which measures 2x minus 3. So to find the perimeter, I'm going to take the length of one side, 2x minus 3, and multiply it times 8. So in other words, after I get done distributing, the perimeter of my regular octagon is 16x minus 24. And again, those words in terms of x tell me there has to be an x in my answer. Number 3 deals with a square, and it tells us that this particular square has a perimeter of 64 inches. And they're asking us to find the area of this square. So if I think about what this square looks like, square's got to have 4 equal sides and 4 equal angles. I'm going to focus on the sides because perimeter is really focusing on the sides. So if the perimeter of this guy is 64, then I know the length of each side has to be 1/4 of that, or 64 divided by 4, which makes each side of this square 16 inches. They don't ask me to find the length of one side, though. They ask us to find the area. So area of a square we're going to find by doing the base times the height, or 16 times 16, which gives us with 256 square inches. So there's a nice little integration of perimeter, the topic for today, taken together in the same problem with area, the topic from yesterday. Number 4 is similar in that they're asking us to find area, they're giving us the area and asking us to find perimeter. So this question, like the preceding question, deals with both perimeter and area. So if the area of our square is 144, I know that we found that area by multiplying the base and the height, which in the square are both equal. So I can just use my calculator to take the square root of 144, and it tells me that the length of one side of that square is 12. To find its perimeter then, because each of these the square contains 4 sides, and each of the sides has 12 inches in it, I can just take that 4 and multiply it times the 12, and I end up with 48 inches for the perimeter of our square. Number 5 is a similar question. It says the perimeter of a regular hexagon is 72 centimeters. The length of one side can be represented by the expression 2x plus 4, and they want us to determine the value of x. So I know that we found the perimeter of this hexagon by taking the 6 sides and multiplying it times the length of one side, or 2x plus 4. So now I know the perimeter, so into this formula for p I can substitute 72, and now I'm going to distribute on the right-hand side and go ahead and solve my equation. And I determine that the value of x is equal to 3. Except that I have to backtrack here because I think I goofed in my algebra. 72 subtract 24 is really 48. So hopefully you were checking up on me as we went through and you caught my mistake. And that's going to make my value of x equal to 4. All right, the last question, they've moved this to the coordinate plane. Don't let that frighten you. The process for finding perimeter is still exactly the same as it was. We're going to find the length of each side. We're going to add them together. So I'm going to go ahead and start by plotting those 3 points so that I can get a visual idea of what my triangle looks like. So there's my triangle, ABC. And in order to find the perimeter of this triangle, we have to take and we have to add the length of each side. And the problem is, I don't know the length of each side, but I can find it. Your good friend, the distance formula, will help you find the measure, the length of each side of the triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and start out by writing down the distance formula. You should have this memorized, but if you don't, now's a good time to revisit it and make sure that it's committed to memory. And it really doesn't matter which of the sides you find distance for first, because we're going to have to find all 3. So I may go ahead and start by finding the distance between points A and B. So I end up with the square root of 25. But that's not in simplest form, so I don't want to leave it like that, because a nicer, simpler way to say the square root of 25 is just to say 5. I need to now go find the distance between points B and C. So if you haven't looked at the distance formula in a while, now's a really good time to revisit that and make sure that you're really secure and confident in your ability to find distances. So when I plug that into my calculator, I find that the distance between points B and C is the square root of 100. But again, that's not a very nice looking number, so I don't want to leave it like that. It needs to be simplified to 10. And lastly, I'm going to go find the length of the third side. That would be the distance between points A and C. So when I go ahead and subtract, when I plug that into my calculator, I end up with the square root of 125. And like the preceding 2 radicals, that can and should be simplified. So I find that the distance between points A and C is 5 square roots of 5. So in order to find the perimeter of this triangle, I'm going to have to take the lengths of all 3 sides and add them together. When I do that, the 10 and the 5 will combine to make 15, plus my 5 square roots of 5. So I find that the perimeter of that triangle is 15 plus 5 square roots of 5. All right, like always, I want you to summarize the key ideas and important understandings up at the top of the next page, and then you can go and see if you can apply what you've learned in this video in order to solve the problems.